are actually at the end of our mission in Concordia. So we have a 1 year mission. So during 1 year, we come to this Antarctic region to do research, to perform research. And it's possible that sometimes you go from one tower to the other without actually seeing someone. But yeah, we were isolated with 12 other people inside the station for 1 year. And in a few days, we will have the first human contact with people from the outside Antarctic world.
Welcome back on the SpaceInfo Podcast. Here we talk about space and everything related to it. If you are passionate about space, astronomy, technology, and everything about it, you can join all our social platforms at the SpaceInfo Club or our website at www.spaceinfo.club, where tons of content and a community of experts are there waiting for you. This is the SpaceInfo Club.
Good morning, Jessica. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm fine. Almost lunchtime, so I'm hungry.
Okay. And now, on my side is almost breakfast time, and it's the very first time I talk with someone, let's say, so far, so isolated from me. A couple of weeks ago, we talked with someone who were training instruments, and they were experiencing some isolation, like a week of full isolation. But this time is quite different. Maybe you'd like to tell us where are you located?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently in Concordia. So Concordia is a station in the middle of Antarctica. And it's a binational station. So it's a research station jointly operated by the French Polar Institute and the Italian Antarctic Research Program. And we are, as I said, really located in the middle of Antarctica. So we are more than 1,000 kilometers away from the coast. And we are situated on what we call the Antarctic Plateau Dome Sea. So if you imagine Antarctica, you have like two kind of mountain plateaus, and we are on the second one that is over 3,000 meters of altitude.
So the cold is not the only problem over there. Also, I've always imagined Antarctica like a plateau, but actually I didn't imagine it was at 3,000 meters from the sea level. So you also have altitude as a problem, yeah. And
absolutely. Because everything is
yeah.
flat around. You cannot imagine it's actually on the top of a mountain, right? So it's kind of crazy, but we are at more than 3,000 meters of altitude.
So must be not an easy life over there. And also, the last days, a couple of days ago, you were telling me that you were waiting for an airplane of, I think for food, something like that.
Yeah, so we are actually at the end of our mission in Concordia. So we have a 1 year mission. So during 1 year, we come to this Antarctic region to do research, to perform research. And we are actually now at the end. So we arrived in November 2023. And in 2 weeks, we are supposed to leave the station. And the first plane was supposed to arrive today, actually. But in Antarctica, you do not do prognostics because it's kind of impossible. We have a lot of changes due to weather conditions, visibility conditions, and so on. So the first plane probably arrives Wednesday, maybe tomorrow, maybe Wednesday. So it's always a bit of a surprise. And we usually know some hours before the plane actually arrives that we need to prepare everything. But we were isolated with 12 other people inside the station for 1 year. And in a few days, we will have the first human contact with people from the outside Antarctic world.
Wow, and that must be kind of exciting, but maybe I don't know if it's ever been difficult for someone to meet someone else for after such a long time.
Yeah, I think the first moment was when the last plane left. It was at the end of January. So basically, we have two seasons in Concordia. We have the summer season where you have about 70 people inside the station, a lot of researcher coming from all over the globe to perform research here in the station. And at the end of January, the last plane leaves, and that was the first strange feeling to be isolated for the next 9 months with 12 other people inside the station. So this was the first challenge of our mission. And the new challenge is now to actually recope with people coming from outside. We lived in the station all together. We had our own private room. We had our little routines. We were, like a little family living in the station. And now we need to readapt to the outside world with new people coming, having to talk to people again. We were so isolated, so we kind of had these family dinners together, but not a lot of communication to the outside world. And now we need to communicate again. We will have new impressions. We will have, new others. We are quite deprivated from others here inside the station when you always live with the same others. Yeah, so quite a challenge to face in the next few days here in Concordia.
Wow, I'm very curious to know, but do you have all the same, let's say, timings? So all the people get up at a certain time and they go to bed to a certain time, or do you have, let's say, a 24-hour coverage? Maybe you have
Yeah,
shifts.
so really interesting question. So we do actually have working hours here in Concordia, which is something between 8:30 to 12:30. Then we have a lunchtime, and then again 1:30 to 6:30 approximately. But during winter over, each of us has a different job, right, inside the station. So each of us kind of adapts the own timeline or schedule during the day. So we have glaciologists that need to go outside to get some samples of snow, and that's quite a challenge for them because of the extreme environment outside. So they adapt a little bit their schedule. I sometimes have to do blood draws in early morning, so I start really early in the morning and sometimes finish also late in the evening. So we do have some schedules, but also we are all working on our part during the winter over. So we have the freedom to adapt our work to the needs that this extreme environment also brings with it.
Okay. So what's your main occupation over there?
Yeah, so I'm a research medical doctor for the European Space Agency, ESA. So basically, I am conducting biomedical research to prepare future deep space missions. So I am trained before I come to Antarctica on several experiments that are proposed by principal investigators all over the globe, principally, to be performed in Concordia. Then I perform what we call a pre-data collection. So it's a baseline of data that we need to have of all the participants. And then during the mission, I'm performing all the biomedical experiments on my crewmates and also on myself. So that's quite a challenge sometimes, but I have a lot of help inside the station, so that's nice. And when we leave after 1 year mission, I also do a post-data collection. So basically, it's quite the same as in spaceflight. You have this pre and post-data collection, and you have a 1 year mission where you have different goals of what you need to study in this environment, and you perform these biomedical experiments during 1 year. So that's my job in Concordia, and one of actually 13 jobs inside the station.
Wow. And yeah, I can imagine that, like, let's say, an independent hospital, what happens over there in terms of medical terms, basically. But because I don't know what's the, let's say, the flight time that you will take from the station to the closest, let's say, human outpost. I don't know how many flying hours do you need to come from where you are located to, let's say, to our world again. But so I think that the distance in case of emergency is one of the main challenges of the whole medical thing, let's say. But maybe there are some other challenges that I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are completely right. So we have this medical challenge. Actually, Concordia is like in a unique extreme environment, right? So we have challenges like, for example, high altitude. So as I said, we are then at an altitude of more than 3,000 meters, and since the atmosphere is really thin here, depending on the atmospheric pressure, you can even go higher in altitude, and that means you have lower oxygen levels in your blood. And that is what we call hypobaric hypoxia. So it's a lack of oxygen in the blood system that can have various impacts on the human body, right? So you have, for example, an affection of the physical performances. So when you go up the stairs inside the station, you are really quick out of breath. When you go outside and you need to walk for several meters, you're really fast out of breath. So it really affects our physical performances. We can do sports, but it's quite difficult actually at this altitude, because sometimes we go even to 4,000 meters of altitude. So that's quite a challenge. It also can affect, the cognitive functions and the cognitive performances. So sometimes we have a lack of concentration capacities. We have a lack of working capacities. So all that high altitude and that lack of oxygen can have a different influences of the human body that affects you in your daily life, right? Then we have 4 months of complete darkness. So we have, during the winter over period where we are only certain people, we have this months of complete darkness, and that can have an impact on what we call the circadian rhythms. It can, for example, decrease sleep quality or have less sleep time, for example, or you wake up earlier or you cannot sleep in. So different problems for sleep here in Concordia, and that same can influence the physical health, but also mental health with mood changes during the day. You have a fatigue during the day. You have problems to adapt to this environment during your winter overstay. So that's quite a challenge too. Super important for research though, but quite a challenge for the person that actually live in the station. We have obviously the what you said. So we are really far away from the coast. We have so we are one of 3 all winter and summer, so all year along bases in Antarctica. The next one is the Russian Vostok station, which is 600 kilometers away. So there is no possibility to reach that one. And we are completely isolated from the outside world, especially during the winter months. So during the winter months, we have temperatures about minus 80 degrees Celsius. There is no possibility of a plane to arrive and to land in Concordia because it's just too cold to reach the station. So when you think about it, we are actually, when you have an emergency on the ISS, something within 3 hours, you can click the button. Within 6 hours, you should be back, depending, on the circumstances, of course, but within 24 hours, you are able to evacuate someone with a medical issue. In Concordia, during these winter months, it's not possible. So we have no possibility of evacuation. So in case of a medical issue inside the base, we rely on what we actually have inside the base. So that's quite a challenge for, of course, medical purposes, but also social. So as I said at the beginning, our social interactions are really small. So we are living with our family, and that's pretty much it. So we have contact, obviously. We can have phone calls with Europe. We can do text messages, but still we don't have real social interactions. So that's quite a limit. And this sense of confinement is a high stress for the human body. So just knowing that you are confined, that you cannot go outside, is actually already a huge stress. And I remember when we flew down to Concordia and I saw this little station, and the station is so little because you actually have nothing around. You don't have any mountains. You don't have any buildings, to compare the station with. So you arrive and you see these 2 towers. So Concordia Station is built with 2 towers, and you see that's so small, and you feel like, Well, that's where I'm gonna be 1 year, right? So that's quite crazy, and you feel this feeling of being confined, which over time goes a little bit away because in like here in Concordia, you can go outside the station, you can go for a walk. You cannot do this on your own on the International Space Station, of course, but still. So both a mental and emotional strain for the human body, and for all medical incidents, as you said. And if I'm talking a little bit more about this medical challenge inside the station, so we have a medical doctor of the station and we have the ESA medical doctor, and that's it. So we are basically two doctors of the station. And if you imagine having an appendix inflammation during winter,
Mhm.
or if you imagine having a cardiovascular event during the mission, so that's a huge challenge, right? Because you have two doctors inside the station that need to actually manage that. And that brings me to living in an environment with limited resources, so you have limited possibilities, and also limited equipment. So you need to work around these things. And that's why we have, at the beginning, we train our people to be like in a medical team, to be in a rescue team, to be in a fire team. So we have a lot of effort in this to put together teams that are actually capable of apporting basic life support in case it's needed inside the station.
Yeah, indeed, I was going to ask which was, let's say, the worst case, or let's say the worst situation that occurred to you in this 1 year of medical experience, because you mentioned an appendix inflammation, and yeah, it's let's say almost common here on the, let's say, the
Yeah.
usual word that people have that kind of inflammation, but on the same time that's a very dangerous situation for the body, because you have to intervene quite fast. So
Yeah.
what is it ever happened during this year?
So yeah, that's absolutely right. So basically, every surgery, every possible surgery, because we do not have all the equipment, right, that you have in a common hospital. So we are really small and limited in all that equipment stuff. So once you have a surgery, you need to act fast, and you need to be able to do everything you need to do to have these people survived inside the station. And the worst, I would say, that could happen would be a surgery that we are not prepared for. So being prepared for everything is the goal. Prevention is the most important. So that's something that also happens in space flight. So you try to prevent any medical issue that could be possible. So that's something that we do a lot. We try to prevent. We try to check all the equipment that the people are working with. We try to check the environment. We try to also talk to the people not going outside when it's too windy, when it's too cold, and so on, to really be preventive in everything you can. And the challenge that we have here, in addition to this isolated remote place, is the altitude. So, with altitude, there is a lot of what we call mountain sickness that comes with it. And basically, what can happen is what we call pulmonary edema, is so that with this lack of oxygen and too much exercise, for example, you can have water in your lungs, and you can also have brain edema, so water in your brain, basically. And these are conditions that are life-threatening and that can happen really, really fast here in Concordia. So it's things that already happened previously and that you then need to detect, first of all, because with the 70 people inside the station, sometimes you don't really, you need to monitor a lot. So that goes into the prevention also. So we have this both. We have the prevention that is super important, and we have the monitoring of people that is super important. And that's actually the basics of medical work here on the station. And yeah, so pulmonary edema and cerebral edema are things that can happen here in Concordia due to the altitude and the extreme environment. and that are next to, I would say, surgery, like we said, the appendix or other surgeries, right? The most critical events that we have on the station.
Sure. So yeah, before let's say going on with with the thing, maybe someone who is listening will be asking, how did you end up in Concordia Station? So what's your let's say path to there over the years?
Yeah. Yeah, so I have quite a crazy past, I would say. I was first studying music, so I did a career in piano. I was, studying classical music. I was taking courses in piano, violin, organ, music theory, all that stuff. And I finally became a music teacher with a master's degree in music and pedagogy in Switzerland. So that was my first career. And I knew I always wanted to do medicine, but I had a little bit of a career choice to do because I already had a master's. So I started with pharmacology, I continued with biomedical studies, and I ended up finally doing medical school because I saw only that pathway, the right pathway for me. And during medical school, I was super interested in physiology, in human physiology, and especially in extreme environments. But I could never really combine those, right? Because there are only few opportunities actually in extreme medicine. And during my final med school year, I was put in contact with an association called Asclepios. And Asclepios is a student-led analog mission from Switzerland, which is associated with the EPFL, the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne. And the goal of this mission is that students learn on how to perform a space mission, an analog space mission, so kind of a simulation of a space mission here on Earth in kind of extreme environments. And that was my first contact with space medicine. I mean, with space in general, but with space medicine specifically to work on. And I could really recommend that one because it opened many doors. And it's also the goal of those associations to, open the goal to students to prepare the next generation of space leaders, of scientific leaders. So really to open the door and to have actually a hands-on approach on how to, for example, lead a mission, on how to manage a mission, on how to get the financial background of a mission, on how to perform protocols and so on. So it has different teams, and all these teams are working during 1 year to put up together one space analog mission. And yeah, that was my first step into space medicine. So I worked, I think, 3 years. Yeah, finally as a head of medical. So we also have a medical team inside Asclepios, which is working on, medical protocols, emergency protocols, medical equipment. What do you need in these remote places? What could you bring? Then we do healthcare during the mission and also pre and post mission. So we try really to do everything like a real space mission to in a space medical related field. So that was my first space medical interaction. And after that, I was super interested in everything that was extreme medicine, extreme environment, space medicine. So I got an internship at the French space agency, CNES, within the spaceship France. And they are working with the MEDES, so it's the Institute of Medicine in Toulouse. And there I was working with engineers, and it's quite funny because I know you are an engineer, but I was
That's true.
applying to to a position that was actually made for engineers, and the
Okay.
title was crew health and performance, right? So I was like, but this is quite space medical related, and I tried it and I got it, and I was finally working on crew health and performance regarding cognitive monitoring for future astronauts in the field.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was my first research subject with the French Space Agency. And also that was the part where I learned about Concordia as one of the biggest analog missions in space exploration. And It was, I think it was just after my medical studies. So I finished medical school, and then in January, there was the application for ESA to become the research MD of the next year for Crew DC-20. And yeah, I applied, and with the selection process is quite full. So you have an interview, a preliminary interview. So first, of course, you have a CV and a motivation letter, and then you have an interview, and then you have diverse medical and psychological tests, because sending 13 people to the most isolated and remote place on Earth requires quite a checkup before you are really able to come down here. So we had this medical and psychological tests, where basically you have cardiovascular testing, respiratory system testing, you have diverse psychological tests, you also have an interview, a psychological interview, and this has all been done in Paris. And if you pass this, well, then you're able to become the new research MD to come down to Antarctica.
And then you ended up like today.
Yeah,
wow.
that's where I ended up today.
Yeah, actually, I couldn't even imagine. Well, I looked at, let's say, your profile before talking today, and so thinking about what to talk about and things like that. But I couldn't imagine that you started as with a career in music, actually, and
Yeah.
so wow, that's such a lot of different experiences. So I'm really, let's say, excited to talk with you because wow, I couldn't imagine. So also congratulations for all the things that you do, and yeah. So also let's say on the preparation side and also on the selection side, everything has a lot of similarities with the space exploration, basically. And I think that probably the only thing that you don't have over there is microgravity, but all the other, let's say, aspects are quite almost the same of the conditions that people experience in during a space mission. Okay, maybe also apart from the fact that you can get out of the station almost as you want, I think. But maybe there are some other similarities that I'm not thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, Concordia is also called White Mars, or sometimes we say Planet Concordia. And that's, as you say, because of the similarities with space and the challenges that actually astronauts face during their missions, right? So, first of all, we have these environmental extremes. So, Concordia is really located in what you call a hostile environment.
Mm.
So humans, like humans are not made for space, or at least not made to survive in space physiologically. Humans are not made to physiologically survive in Antarctica. So that's really a fact. And that's what we can use as a similarity as going to space, with a bit less of challenges as actually going to space. The temperatures that drop up to minus 80 degrees Celsius are quite similar to temperatures you could feel on Mars. That's something else that we can test here, and that's why we do a lot of studies here in Antarctica. Then what we a little bit already talked about is the lack of oxygen. Why? Because this hypobaric hypoxia kind of mirrors the oxygen that is available for astronauts when they wear their spacesuits, or when they are, in a future lunar base or Martian base. So it's approximately the level of oxygen that we would expect there. So that's super interesting, because we can do studies here to see how the human body is adapting to this condition, so that we can make, countermeasures for future deep space missions, for future habitats, for future spacesuits. Because for now, going out of the ISS is quite a small time, right, of the duration. But when you imagine having actually a base on the moon where people would stay for a long duration, for a longer period of time, that suddenly comes really important. So we need to know how the human is adapting. And today, Concordia is probably the best way to do so, because the data that we have from EVAs is quite small. So here we have really a long duration period where we can actually measure these changes. Of course, isolation and confinement. So the remoteness of Concordia really mirrors the isolation and confinement of astronauts inside the ISS. We can test mental resilience. We can also test interpersonal relationship because here in Concordia, we have a 1 week training all together, but basically, except from that, we don't know each other. It's not like astronauts that train for many years together that really get to know each other. Here we are put in with a bunch of people with different backgrounds. So 2 cultures, actually 3, with these a medical doctor, but different cultures, different backgrounds. We have technicians that mainly are here for the maintenance of the station. We have scientific staff that does research. So we really have a different bunch of people that are put together suddenly for 1 year. So that's quite interesting to understand how our team, team currents, how is team dynamic evaluating, and so on, and getting also more knowledge about different cultures in this setting. So that's quite an interesting focus as well. I was talking about others at the beginning of the session. So we have kind of a sensory deprivation, right? We have not a lot of others here, and it's funny because sometimes we use a sunscreen, just to have a new smell, to have something to smell, because you kind of lose your smell. Also, the lose of the food smell. So a lot of things are frozen. A lot of things are lyophilized, so don't really have a smell, and you really lose that one. And you also do so on a future moon base or Mars base or on the ISS. So that's also something that you can test here and check whether you can do countermeasures or not, and how the people adapt. Then we have autonomy and self-sufficiency, which is one of great focus here in Concordia. So the station needs, in these months where we cannot have any plane that comes back, we need to be super self-sufficient, and we need to rely on all these resources that are limited, and we need to work with that. And one example of that is maybe the water treatment system that we have here, the gray water treatment system unit. So yeah, that all comes together, a bunch of similarities with space, to be studied here in this extreme environment, with a bit less of challenges, at least financial challenges, to actually go to space, to be studied here before we send astronauts to future deep space missions.
Yeah, so maybe also over this year you've seen changes of the station itself.
About the station or about the people?
Yeah, basically about both. So how do you see let's say
Yeah.
the changes? Yeah, actually also about, let's say, the behavioral aspect of the people.
Yeah. Yeah, so when you're living in this small environment, you pay attention to every little detail. And when you arrive, there is so much going on in the station. So you have this bunch of people coming from everywhere. You have a lot going on. You have a lot of tasks, because also each plane brings new stuff. So you need to, go and help to take the stuff out, to do work of maintenance in the station, and so on. And at the beginning, I remember to have the smells of all these people and all the work that has been done inside the station. So the station was quite living. And since, I would say, 4 months, I really lost this. So when the last plane leaves Concordia, you are suddenly alone, and you are walking inside the station, and it's possible that you see nobody because you're only 13 people. people. And before there was no time alone. So before you had, you had a room with one other people, you always had someone somewhere. So it was impossible to have some kind of privacy. And during winter months, you have your own room. So people go to their room, and it's possible that sometimes you go from one tower to the other without actually seeing someone. So this had really changed over time.